Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mast, and welcome back to another patch notes video. This time around, we're going to do things a little bit different. Hopefully, my voice will hold up, because I was actually recording a patch notes video for about an hour and a half, was almost done with it, and I was like, you know what? I have been going over so many changes that are practically the same thing. I just want to keep it short and concise, and I want to focus on some points that I have, because I'm actually fairly frustrated with this patch, even though there are some really good things with this patch. There's a lot of stuff that bugs the hell out of me, and I kind of want to turn this into a little bit of a discussion video. If you guys want more of the significant details that I skip over, as always, I'll have a patch notes link in the description of the video. Yeah, I think we can just dive right in. I tried to kind of mark down some thoughts in advance for myself. One thing that we can lead off with here, boom, plug it right here, because I'll forget it otherwise. Anubis one can move now. Yeah, 50% move speed on Anubis one. You can move a little bit. That's about it. Anubis gets a little bit of a buff that way. Honestly, not all that big of a deal, but it's nice. Nice little quality of life. Looks less clunky too. Yeah, I'm putting it there because otherwise it's gonna be like way down at the bottom, and that's actually a big change that people have been waiting for like years. So that's a thing. We can also start off positive with not the skins, don't care. Not this, don't care. Nope, don't care. Hang on, give it a sec. Give it a sec. HUD update, and it's actually good. I'll put some footage on the screen for you guys. So there's a big HUD update so that like your screen itself, the K screen, the item shop, the scoreboard, everything looks better. Console is getting huge improvements. I believe console is supposed to be the exact same as PC now. I could be wrong. It could be like some of it's a little bit different, and it's just certain things are now the same as PC that weren't before. And there's also a ton of customization options. They're making it so that for the HUD editor itself, you can customize more things that you couldn't before, which is also setting up for anybody interested in it. They're going to be trying to bring back HUD skins, which apparently they'd kind of done at one point. I don't really remember them being a thing. Maybe they weren't very common, or maybe it's just a very short little window. But they're going to try and do HUD skins in the future and have it like be an actual thing that you can do, which could be really cool. Like I would love to have like a dark themed HUD. I think could be really fun. But it looks really good. They've made some great quality of life changes. I have seen absolutely nothing bad about it. I have only seen things that look good. Some examples would be you get a much more in-depth K screen now. I say K screen, console players probably confused. Much more advanced death screen now, so you can see more details about how you died. You can see CCs that you were hit by. You can see what individual gods did, I think entirely. I think you can like click on it or something or kind of sort through it, so you can see like literally every instance of damage with your death. And hopefully with all of this changing, they will get rid of the bug where you kind of died and you don't get to see the exact damage and it's buggy as hell. I'm sure like most people should know about that by now. It's really dumb. It's kind of hard to tell what you actually did to people and what people did to you around death right now. Hopefully that gets fixed with this. I actually don't know for sure. Item shop getting a little bit of a buff as well. I'm saying buff. Item shop getting improved as well, so you can now filter through items better. Before you could filter through like one item category out of base and two in base. And now you can filter through, I think basically just all of them, as many as you want to pair together at any point. So you get to see, like, get a better idea of items. It all looks better. And there's also finally an anti-heal category and a heal bolstering category, which is something that they're kind of working on right now because there's a big changes to anti-heal and healing, mostly healing in this update. Which we'll talk about in a little bit. So that's all really good. Everything with UI looks great. It looks like you can do more to it. It just looks better to begin with. It looks really clean. Lots of visual clarity. I think the other thing that I didn't talk about is cooldowns are now more visible on your abilities down at the bottom. So that thing where like relic is coming up, abilities coming up, and it looks like it's up, but it's not out of the corner of your eye. It's now more visually obvious where it'll be like darkened out more so, and there'll be a more visually obvious kind of like clock leading up to it. So that's good too. Much less likely to be like, oh, 1 second on beads and you think it's up because it looks like it's practically up out of the corner of your eye. Some bug fixes. I'm not going to go through these. I basically have like a list of things I want to talk about. So as we kind of get into this, I'm mostly going to talk about my thoughts. We're going to talk about general things. We're not going to focus on specifics that much because there is a ton of very small specifics that aren't very important. So if you guys want to read those for yourselves, go ahead, feel free. I don't care. But I do want to talk about some of my thoughts on this stuff and just also just generally go over the important stuff and just not focus on like the super nitty gritty stuff. So this doesn't take 2 hours for no reason when it can probably be less than 30 minutes, and try and keep this one a little more short and clean. And yeah, because there's really not that many balance changes that aren't just general balance changes right now. Almost everything they're doing in this patch balance wise is like new items, just general kind of global changes, That's mostly it. There's tons of little number differences, but they're not that important. We don't need to go over them all. So let's talk about some of this stuff that I was actually kind of forgetting we have to talk about. Player kill XP reward changes is a little bit of a change right now, where they're trying to make it so that snowballing is less extreme for like TDM type games. And by TDM, I mean team deathmatch, where like plenty of the videos recently, it's happening a lot right now in Smite. There are games where you will stomp, you will kill people, you will continue to kill people, you will not do objectives, you get plenty of farm, you stay ahead of them in farm, and now they're trying to make that less rewarded, where objectives are more important. So if you kill an enemy that's ahead, or if you are killed while you are behind, you're getting more rewarded for killing that ahead enemy, and you are giving like no reward if you're behind enough, or at least less reward. So that's a pretty big change right there. We're not going to do the exact numbers. It doesn't matter that much. Getting more of a reward for a shutdown. By the way, one of the things with the UI as well, I'm sure it said it up there and I just didn't read it, but I've seen it, is you're also getting to see who's on kill streaks in the scoreboard. You can kind of see like their kill streak next to their name if they're on one, which is kind of cool. So you get a better feeling of like who to shut down, and it's just kind of more visually obvious if you don't want to think about it that much. Yeah, a little bit of a ranked reset, nothing big, just kind of the normal thing where everybody resets like a rank. So like masters go to diamond, MMR gets reset a little bit, stuff like that. If your rank's not close to the top, then it doesn't really change very much. Conquest, we get new art. I'll show the new art. We get new jungle paths. I'll try and show the new jungle paths a little bit right now. I actually haven't even, I haven't seen them myself because I was doing a patch notes video, and the patch notes show was like starting as these came out. So I only got to see a little glimpse of the show. So yeah, I don't have thoughts on these because I literally haven't seen them yet. I don't think it's going to be a crazy change, so I doubt I have to really worry about it that much. This is something that I'm not a big fan of. We will talk about this a tiny bit, where the Bat Harpies are getting replaced with a Cyclops. That part I don't mind, but they're getting this extra treasure chest for the team that is behind in gold overall. And the more that you're behind, you're getting more chests up to 5. So this is a gold reward, kind of like a Gold Fury, but much smaller, or like a totem that scales, where you are potentially giving your teammates a lot of gold for losing the game. And that money is distributed more to the people that have the least gold. The issue I have with this, I think, is kind of obvious. When you're losing the game in Smite, the only balance changes that I think they should make is that maybe the team losing should not be punished so hard for losing the game. They can focus on general global stuff that will snowball the game so that when you're ahead, you don't get as absurd of a lead. I really don't think these changes feel good, because it's really just like, oh, we're losing, so try and grab this and we'll just all of a sudden get these big chunks of gold. It's weird. It's just a weird change, because for one thing, it's literally a reward that you get for losing the game. I feel like it's much better to just mitigate the impact of losing the game instead of just actually giving them a reward they need to go get. It's weird. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I'm not going to dive super deep into that. I always think this is literally just a bad way to go, and they can focus on different changes on a global scale, like on the entire scale of the map, to make things scale a little less extremely if they're worried about that. Instead, they're adding this. I think it's clunky and weird. Yeah, we have Cyclops camp instead of roaming Harpy camp, or instead of small camp / roaming Harpy camp in the Fire Giant side, right? Is it Gold Fury or Fire Giant? I don't remember now. Which one is it? I can't read. Okay, on the Gold Fury side. Yeah. So no longer going to be a roaming Harpy camp or a small camp, as in roaming Harpies will not spawn out of the camp the way they did before, and you will get a Cyclops camp every 2 minutes that has this thing that you can pick up if you're losing. And then on the other side of the map, on the Fire Giant side, it is staying a small Harpy camp and it is staying a roaming Harpy camp, but it also gets a 2-minute timer, and then it gets half the XP that it would have before. I don't know how much XP the Cyclops camp is going to have. I don't think it says. I'm assuming it's similar to this nerf. So basically the idea is we are having the farm, but it spawns twice as often. I'm assuming the same thing is going to go for the Cyclops camp, but there's no roaming Harpies, but there's that potential incentive if you're losing the game. Yeah. So like you got to go do this more often, which is good, but they're literally having the XP, which I don't think is good because this camp already sucked. Like it's saying bad. You just have to do it more often if you want to do it. I don't think that's a good change. I think they should nerf the XP and gold on colored camps. Feels weird to say that. Can I say that? It's like it's green and stuff. Like green's okay, right? Anyways, I feel like they should be nerfing those and then buffing mid camps and small camps instead. Fire Giant is getting a really big change. So Fire Giant is going to heal for less. It is going to give you more power. And the really big change is that, like before, it has a 4-minute timer in between spawns. Unlike before, it now only lasts for 3 minutes. So this is going to make it much closer to Season 8, Season 9, I guess all the prior seasons, where you have a 1 minute cooldown between Fire Giant running off and the next one spawning. That's going to be getting brought back. So very, very important. Going to have a very, very big impact from that. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and if it feels like it was actually good having that change that we got, or if it feels like we actually do want to go back to having the setups like before. Because right now you can kind of have this thing where it's like, if you're timing out Fire Giant, you can go straight from one FG into another FG. But then still, when the FG spawns, the Fire Giant runs out, the other team can fight you at the same level, hypothetically. I honestly thought it was kind of cool doing it the way they had it before. I'm surprised they're taking it away so soon, but I'm assuming they just think this feels better. And then it's also going to nerf the duration of FG, so you got to do more with your power play, and you can't just wait it out so long. You got to think a lot more about it. Gold's Fury is now faster, so you can't kite it. There's some stuff about body blocking. I don't know if that's really been a big thing. Bastions are a little bit tankier. This is a big one that I want to talk about. Tower is doing more damage early game. I hate this change. I hate this change so much. Tower has continued to get buffed over and over and over again so that its base damage hits harder. So that at any stage of the game, Tower is going to absolutely, well, not any stage of the game. In the early stages of the game, Tower is going to absolutely smack. Tower is going to do crazy damage. A good reference point right now, if you're like level 3, you got like 800 HP or so, you dive a tower, you dive just a little bit, like a little extra, not just a tiny little glimpse into tower, but you go like a few feet, you probably eat 2 tower shots, it does half of your HP. If you are cleaning up a kill where you got to roam a little bit in a tower, a little bit more than that, just that one shot, but 2 shots is doing half of your HP for that little bit. You get so little done during that time. That's like a second in tower. You get so little done, and it is doing half your health bar. Tower is already insanely strong early game. If you literally nerfed its damage by half at level 1, Tower would still feel strong. Obviously, you could do way more, but it would still feel strong. It would still dumpster your health bar. It hits so absurdly hard right now in the early game, and literally all that they have to do is up the scaling. And instead, they keep upping the base damage, and it's pissing me off, man. I really miss being able to dive a little bit early on, because you're still super punished. It still smacks. Like the damage of Tower compared to any god at that stage is not comparable. It's like getting hit by 2 death sighs every second. I'm not kidding. It's actually like that. So like this is like 2 Thanabots dumpstering your health bar, and they scale up per shot. It's so crazy, man. It's so excessive. So I think they need to completely undo this. I think this should be like 150 tops, and then it should scale harder. And not only should it scale harder, it should scale way harder so that late game towers feel like they do things. Because late game, it doesn't feel like they do anywhere near as much. It's so weird that we get this thing where like early game, it does minimum 1/4 of your health bar on even the first shot, even though it goes up like 50 damage a shot. To then late game, it does like less than 10% of your health bar. Like that's such a big shift. And I feel like it shouldn't be like that, that it should be closer to the same. Like you shouldn't die very much early game, but you should be able to do it. You shouldn't just insta die for thinking about it. Yeah. Anyways, that's my take on that. Roaming back harpies. I feel like this is basically, we don't really need to know anything, right? I don't think it's very important. There are now roaming mid harpies, which is a thing. They're going to kind of roam around like the neutral farm, like the neutral bosses. I guess I should just call them the bosses, like Gold Fury and Fire Giant. So that might be a little bit interesting. They're also removing a mid harpy from each camp. So the idea is they're trying to nerf farm for jungle and mid. Again, I feel like the better way to go for this is that they can nerf the XP that you get from the colored buffs for nerfing jungle, especially. Because it's just, like that's a decent source of your farm, right? That's important. And then mid really doesn't need a farm nerf. Like I think anybody that's been playing the game knows that ADC gets the most farm by far, and it's not close. Jungle farm's pretty decent, but like ADC gets the most farm. The only way you're getting most jungle farm is if just people aren't doing camps and you solo them all, and that's just taking farm from your teammates, or your teammates just being bad at farming, one or the other. So ADC just gets to like play the game and hit level 20 faster than anybody, and it's not very close. If solo actually hyper farms, solo can compete with that a decent amount. That's just normally you just shouldn't be doing that as soloing. You should be rotating, so that's not going to happen at all. And then mid straight up can't, because support should be there fairly often. If not like all the time, especially, casuals and ranked, it's pretty often for support to just hug the mid laner at a certain point of the game. So you're splitting a lot of farm, so you can't come close to ADC farm. And jungle will be there some, so jungle will take some farm from mid. So to me, it's like, I'm okay with nerfing farm for jungle. I just think it's actually dumb to nerf farm for mid. in my opinion. And it's so weird if they are going to do it to not nerf farm for ADC pretty hard, because it's crazy how much farm ADC gets right now. So they're going to get even more compared to these two, because these were the only two that could compete at all, and they still just didn't really catch up normally. Purple buff. Mage ADCs do less damage with it now, so they get less crazy of an early game, because right now Mage ADCs can actually hit like as hard with autos and then just have good abilities. So they're getting a little bit of an early game nerf. That's good. We can skip some of this stuff. Silver buff gets a little bit of a buff, worth more. Blue buff gets a little bit of a buff. It's worth more. Blue buff still stucks as a buff, but at least you get more of a reward for doing it, like XP and gold. Yeah, let's talk about the anti-heal stuff. I think we're good on everything. I got like a little note that I made. Yeah, I think we can talk about anti-heal here. So Hi-Rez is making big changes to anti-heal. The first most important thing to talk about is that the brawling system, the out-of-combat anti-heal system, is removed from the game. And that's a great change. And almost everybody, if not everybody, should agree with that. It's something that I've talked about for a long time. I know a lot of pro players have talked about for a long time, about how like basically just as soon as it was added to the game, like, what is this? This is a terrible Band-Aid fix. It's annoying as hell. If you guys have seen one of my million tier videos, you will see me very frequently ever since they added the system kind of meme / talk about how I need to get hit so I can tier heal. I'm not really trolling when I say that. It's genuinely important, and that's why that's dumb. You get almost 50% healing from, or 50% reduced healing from not being in combat. So if you initiate with the heal, you would just get like way weaker heal. So if you get like autoed, or you just eat a weak ability from an enemy god and then you heal, you actually heal more than that damage you take by normally a considerable amount. And so that's been a stupid mechanic, because you get stuff like that where it's actually like take a little bit of damage on purpose so you heal more. That is very, very dumb. So they took that out, and that's a great change. They are doing some other changes that I'm not a big fan of, but I think overall all these changes that you guys can see right here are really good. Where anti-heal will no longer have, you can't fully anti-heal somebody in general circumstances. It's now normally capped at 80%. That's not true for stuff like Serket, Odin, or Osiris ults that are 100% anti-heals. They're meant to specifically be 100% anti-heals. That's fine. Those gods can be counter gods. I'm completely okay with that. And it's a short duration. It's not like it's just, oh, they exist and now I don't heal. So that's fine. Physical lifesteal cap. This isn't really an important change. You never got close to this. Even if you meme build, you don't really get close to this. So this is going down to 50%. That doesn't really mean anything on its own. Magical lifesteal cap getting decreased from 65% to 40%. That is a bigger change. However, with the nerfs to lifesteal items in general, neither of these are important about thinking about. You generally just shouldn't be hitting these for the most part. So even though these changes are happening, it doesn't really matter that much. And then shield reduction is something that I think we can just talk about later. Yeah, we can just get to it later, I think. So let me scroll a little bit. I guess we can move straight on to some new items. Okay. Gosh, should I just talk about these first? Let's talk about these first. Let's go through the items first. So there's reworks and there's new items. We'll talk about these really quickly. Rod of Asclepius, similar stats to before. You are now getting a 30% healing dealt increase. I believe PSV means yourself, not teammates around you. I think it's only you get that 30% healing increase. That's fine. Allied gods within 30 units have 10% CDR. I will talk about some stuff in this video about how I'm really not a fan of auras right now. There's really not a ton in this patch that's aura focused. I'm just really annoyed by it in general. I think it's a bad system that we have where a lot of these kind of supporty items are just exist and do this. Literally zero skill involved, just exist and do this. Like the only skill is being remotely near your teammates because a lot of the auras are huge. However, this aura I'm mostly okay with. It's a 10% cooldown aura. That's a little bit interesting. They're doing some CDR stuff in this patch where it's like doing certain things gives teammates your bonus cooldown or yourself bonus cooldown. And it's 30 units, which is pretty small. That's like AMA 1, which I guess a lot of you guys might not play AMA, so you might not really know that reference. But like that's pretty small. That's hugging somebody fairly close. I think that's fine. So this is actually potentially kind of an interesting item. I'm completely fine with it. And not a crazy change to Rod of Asclepius. So new item, Rejuvenating Heart. Fairly tanky stats, 300 HP, 300 mana, 70 power. Pretty normal price. Successfully hitting enemy gods with basic attacks and abilities provides a stack of 6% healing dealt that is consumed by the next ability heal used for a max of 8 stacks, and you can only gain 1 stack per god per ability hit. Just the normal, like you can't somehow abuse this magically with like a billion ticks or anything like that. So this might confuse people. I'm not sure. Healing dealt might sound weird. Basically, all this is saying is just the actual healing applied. Kind of a weird way to word it, but just the healing applied from your next heal. So this is something that could seem really scary because 6 times 8 is 48 and a 48% healing boost is a ton. However, you're normally not going to come anywhere close to stacking it for typical use. you are normally going to be doing something where maybe in a brawling circumstance you auto a few times, but normally it'll be something like Afro Kiss somebody 3, that's 1 stack, then you 2, then maybe you Afro Kiss again, then you 3, that's 2 stacks. Yeah, it's really, maybe you auto in between for a poly proc if you're going damage. Like you're not going to proc that much. Yeah, you're normally, this is generally going to hover, at least in like actual later game team fights and stuff, where you need to be smart and you can't just be autoing like a bot. This is normally going to be 1 to 3 stacks, which means maximum 18% heal increase, which is nowhere close to this. So not that big of a deal, not even a strong item. Hypothetically, you could get some sort of weird circumstance where maybe I guess you're giving yourself a big self heal on like Ao Kuang through his passive or something, like 48% stack through damage on his passive, but that's not strong, so I don't think it matters. And yeah, like I don't think it's gonna be good. I think it's straight up, it's just gonna need buffs. I'm pretty sure. I think the concept is fine. I think the concept is absolutely fine. I think it's gonna need buffs for it to be any good. The Last Gasp, this item's pretty cool. This is kind of like a healing version of Bancroft's, where for one thing, the stats are kind of similar to Deso minus the cooldown in the Deso passive, where you're getting big chunk of power, some health, and then pen. So it hits pretty hard. It's not that expensive. But after healing an ally with an ability, you gain 10 power per 10% of their missing health for 6 seconds and can only occur once every 10. So if somebody's low and you're trying to heal them up, and it's assuming the passive is actually available, then you're getting potentially a big chunk of power. Normally, of course, it's probably going to be 50 or less power. It's not going to be crazy. Hypothetically, it could actually be like 90 or something. Kind of a cool concept for an item. So I'm pretty content with this one. They reworked the names of like the Caduceus tree, but this is just Caduceus right here. So Caduceus is a little different, and this is an aura where I might start actually talking about these a little bit. Yeah, Caduceus keeping fairly similar stats before. It's got power, it's got health, it's got cooldown, it's got MP5. Your healing is increased by 30%, like we saw with Asclepius. And an aura where within 70 units, which is crazy huge, you give your teammates 10% CCR, not CDR, so that's meaning they get crowd controlled less, and 4% move speed. So for one thing, I will say the 4% move speed, potentially scary. Move speed in Smite is always a stat that is very dangerous when it comes to just letting people have more of it, because Smite is just a game where you get a crazy amount of value out of movement in general. And so like characters like Amaterasu one, for example, a huge chunk of that ability is literally just giving your teammates move speed for being near. And that's like a 30-ish unit aura. I don't remember if it's exactly 30, it's close to 30. Which is less than half of this. And that's a very big difference, right? And then of course you could take in like the fact that it's volume instead of really like it matters more than just like the radius, that it's like kind of a volume. If it's a volume, then it's like kind of a quarter-ish of the total area. Like it's a massive difference in how big that aura is. So yeah, 4% move speed, really probably not that big of a deal. This is probably fine. This could be a dangerous game if they want to like buff this at all or add it to other items. But 4% is probably okay. It probably doesn't matter that much. I do want to talk about auras a little bit, and this will kind of just be the focal point, even though really most of this is just stuff that's already in the game. I don't remember them particularly adding a bunch of auras that I like am annoyed with right now or anything. I do think Smite's been doing this thing lately, or Hi-Rez has been doing this thing lately, where we have Prophetic Cloak, which is just way better Thebes. Thebes is still in the game. Sov is in the game. Heartward is in the game. Sentinels, what's it called? Whatever, the right side version of Sentinels is in the game. And if you build all of those items together, you can give teammates like 70 plus prots. And depending on the context, like if you're just splitting Sentinels and all those with one person, it can be like, I think at least 100 or very close to 100. That is absolutely insane. That is more than a full tank item for both sides of prots, by the way. That's like giving, you can give your teammates like 1.5 mantles by just existing in their general vicinity. And I am fine with tanks giving their teammates big perks. I really don't like the system of you just exist so they get perks. I really want more applicable things, and that is harder to balance. But especially like those are just straight up too strong right now. Like I'm glad support feels better, but I would love it if they could come up with more interesting ways to make support feel better rather than just everybody's tanky as hell near their support. Especially because like it feels like when you're fighting without your support and they're fighting with their support and their support's literally doing nothing and just sitting there like a bot, it's crazy how much harder they are to kill from all those prots. It's insane. It's a disgusting difference. They should just win. If they're not bad, they should just win that fight. So this aura really not that strong in terms of the stats it applies, but I hope the 70 unit stuff, man. I hope if they're going to be doing auras like this, I really want them to be like 30 unit auras. I really want it to be like, I am hugging on my support. I am really paying close attention to my positioning. And if my teammates want to benefit, they need to be paying attention to their positioning and they can't just be diving past me. I think we massively need to shrink this aura if we're going to have crazy strong auras. And that's my take. That's my aura thing. I don't think we have to worry about more stuff in the patch notes. I just kind of wanted to say that because there's kind of a dangerous direction with that right now. This item's kind of interesting, but it sucks. Vital Amplifier, 40 power, 200 health, MP5, 20% attack speed. After healing yourself or an allied god with an ability, you gain 10% attack speed and 5% attack damage for 6 seconds, stacking 3 times. I cannot think of anybody in Smite where this item is actually good. Actually, no. I can. There's like 2, right? Because I remember talking about this the first time I was doing the patch notes video and then decided I want to make it shorter. Yeah, this is just, it's a weird item. Generally speaking, unless you actually are continuing to heal yourself over and over again, which is rare because keep in mind, this is a physical item. Most people just can't use this because it's attack speed and damage. Like imagine like Guan using this. You know, Guan would maybe be somebody that wants to use this. He heals a lot. He gets attack speed and basic attack damage. He doesn't care. It's just weird. So yeah, I don't really know why they're adding this. I feel like they should just come up with a different item. Set can maybe abuse it really hard. If AMC Hive stayed the same as it used to, which it doesn't, if AMC was a heal and this is kind of like cheesy with it, where you could just kind of like have a bunch of hives nearby and just stack this up through those, I don't know if it'd apply that way or not, then it would be super broken on him. But yeah, it's maybe a sad item. I think that's it. Normally, like a character like Dawn's that self heals, they literally can't heal often enough. I guess Cupid can use it. It's too specific, man. It's just, they shouldn't have the item in the game. It's going to be used on so few gods, and then it's potentially broken on those gods. So you just shouldn't let it happen. The Scepter is a pretty cool item. So again, kind of generic stats like we've seen with the others. After healing yourself or an allied god with an ability for the next 6 seconds, each time you damage an enemy god, your non-ultimate ability cooldown is reduced by half a second. This reduction can only occur once per second, and the effect may only occur once every 12 seconds. So yeah, basically you are getting a 6-second window when you are initiating this heal and then trying to fight, where if you're continuing to apply damage frequently over these, like every single second basically, then you're potentially getting up to a 3-second total cooldown reset. Normally it's not going to be that. Normally it'd be like 1.5, something like that. But you're basically healing and then fighting and then getting cooldown reset so you can heal again and you can fight again. Or at least get more abilities off in the fight that you're actively in. So kind of a cooldown incentive item, fairly interesting. I don't think it'll be OP or anything. Yeah, kind of cool. Like I like cooldown reset items. As long as they're not just game breaking, which I don't think this will be, then I think that's actually cool. So I'm content with this. These items, I guess we'll probably go over them entirely. Yeah, there's not that many. Okay, we can go over them. I think this is dumb. So there are shields in Smite, and we have some relics in Smite currently that are anti-shield relics. We have Ankh, which is also anti-heal, and we have Sunder, which is bad, but then also anti-shield. Sunder, I don't know, like Sunder upgrade can be okay. It's mostly just not that good. I wish it was good. Sunder's actually a fun relic. Yeah, this item has very big generic stats where you can build it in basically any circumstance, like Mana Core spikes, something like that. You guys remember the Mana Core spikes release where everybody started buying it because the stats were OP. So it's got that, which is not great. And then every time an enemy within 30 units gains a shield, which is fairly close, 30 units, not like a huge range, you gain 15% move speed for 4 seconds. This seems very random. I feel like this is very, very oddly specific, and they just don't need to add this to the item. It's not that it's necessarily bad, it's just very specific where this would even be relevant, you know? This really is just like their team gains shields. If they happen to gain the shield when I'm there, I get a zoom a little bit. Like it's kind of like just giving somebody regrowth where it's like, you are playing the game against this comp, you will get regrowth sometimes. It's just weird to me, right? Like it's not something you're going to think about that much. You're just going to build it for anti-shield and then you'll get that sum. So I'm not really a fan of that. And then the aura, any shields applied on enemy gods within 30 units will be reduced by 30%. So I have an issue with this where basically shields and smite are incredibly easy to balance. And the only times we should ever have issues with them is because Hi-Rez is not balancing them. And I don't personally have issues with them. But if there are issues with Smite, if Hi-Rez thinks there's issues with Smite, or at least the community feels like that, they can just nerf each shield individually, the way they're going to do to all these different healing characters. I can kind of scroll to it, but I don't know if it's worth. All these different characters down here getting huge heal nerfs. Lots and lots of stuff. I might have a hard time finding my way back, but like all that stuff down there, this is a crazy huge patch notes. There's a ton of different nerfs to that stuff. Just like that, they can do that to the very few characters in the game that have shields and the very few relics that give shields or items that give shields. And instead they're adding this. And I just don't think there's a point. Because shields, you can nerf the duration of, so they don't last that long. You can increase or nerf the impact of, so they give like a smaller or bigger shield. And you can play around it. Like they can just expire, or you can just fight through it. Like there's so much more counterplay to a shield, which is a temporary health protector, compared to healing, where you just sustain in a variety of ways and just get more health back. So I think it's dumb that they're even considering this. I think there's actually no point. I think they can just balance the shields and that this is just weird. So that's my take. That's my little pitch. Going along with that, Gem of ISO is now going to be also a shield nerf item, where shields applied to anybody hit by Gem of ISO gets those reduced by 50% for 2.5 seconds. Naturally, with the change to Gem of ISO, this is going to be weird, where you might just not have that passive up and not be able to use it. And so you're maybe potentially trying to use this as a shield nerf, hypothetically. I think realistically what this is going to do is it's going to change basically nothing. And then every once in a while you'll be like, oh nice, I applied this on accident. It's a weird change. This change is fairly cool. I'm not a fan of the shield part of it, but I actually really like this change as a concept. So, Envenomed is now more of an anti-heal item and less of a debuff item. And what I mean by that is instead of being a slow and damage output reducer, it is now a slow and healing reducer. And shield reducer, which again, I don't think the shield reducer is cool, but I think the healing reduction is actually really smart because they took away Shadow Steel Shuriken. There is no anti-heal crit item. Toxic Blade is still generally bad. So now if you're an auto attacker, you can commit this crazy amount of money to eventually anti-healing. And I actually think that's a really good change. So this might need a nerf. This is a pretty big chunk, especially since they're nerfing healing. But I actually think this is a great anti-heal change. And it'll be pretty interesting for the item. So moving on, we're getting to kind of generic heal stuff that I think I can skip over. So I really quickly want to take a little look at my little notes for myself. I think this is the part of the video where you think there's a lot more coming and then there's not because I skip all this. So I guess we can very quickly take a little peek at these. Generally speaking, what they are doing is items / relics are getting nerfed and abilities are getting nerfed by about 20 to as much as 50% in terms of healing. And on average, it's around 30%. Most abilities / items / relics are going to heal for about 30% less than they used to, but they are also taking away out of combat anti-heal. So in combat, you are healing for less, assuming you're not anti-healed or whatever, you're just still healing for less than you would before. But out of combat, you're actually healing for a little bit more, and it's less awkward and less clunky. So there's that. We're going to skim through a ton of this, try and stop on anything that feels very important. Diamond Arrow buff, you're now getting 10% pen on that. You're getting more crit on Ornate Arrow, so that's getting a little bit of a buff. Death's Toll and Cowl get more power. Those are kind of relevant. Bluestone gets nerfed. Warrior's Axe heals you for less. It does the same damage. Sundering actually does more damage now, although it recently got nerfed, so it's not more than before it was nerfed. Bumbas gets a little bit more power, and Eye of the Jungle get more power, so that these items are more relevant now in the jungle. There's been a lot of Bluestone sort of cheese in the jungle, where you can go Bluestone for early game power spike. These items are getting more power in order to help for that. Personally, I'd love to see Bumbas go to 15 power because it's still bad. Even if it has 15 power, it still doesn't feel as good as Eye normally. So I think it should have 15 power. And other roles shouldn't be building Bumbas right now. It doesn't make sense. So that's my personal thoughts. Bumbas only going to 10, Eye's going to 15. So much less likely to be worth building Bluestone in the jungle right now. More heal nerfs, more heal nerfs. Let me scroll this way. It'll be a little cleaner. More power on these items to make up for the lifesteal nerfs. We're not going to go over the exact specifics. They're just generally nerfed. Lifesteal a lot less important. Soul Gem gets a pretty interesting change. This is one that's worth talking about. There's going to be less power scaling on this item, so Soul Gem not hitting as hard. However, there is now level scaling on the heal. So Guardians or low power mages can now build this as a healing item and not need power as much and just not focus on the power damage scaling for Soul Gem procs and focus on using it as a way to heal their teammates. So the numbers, the way this adds up is 115 at level 20 for healing. So potentially somebody like Ardio could actually maybe get enough value out of this for healing their teammates that they might want to build it, even if they're building 0 power. So that's worth keeping in mind. Bancroft's got kind of farmed, just way less lifesteal, literally no relevant change to help with that. So it's less lifesteal. Like, yeah, they buffed this, but it doesn't matter. So Bancroft's way worse. Typhons is now a 20% pen item. So very often you will now want to build Typhons over Chiron's coin. And you will almost never want to build Obsidian, because unless I'm forgetting, they did nothing to Obsidian, so Chiron's Coin was already almost always better. And now this is also really good, and Obsidian's kind of removed from the game. I think it's a bad change for, I feel like, obvious reasons. You don't need a bunch of 20% pen items. It's just dumb. Obsidian should be the big pen item, and it's not, because it's not worth building. So I'm not a fan, but we don't need to dwell on it. Cooldown's getting an increased cooldown. Teleport is getting longer cooldowns. I believe the tier 3 cooldown is staying the same. So more important to upgrade it now if you're going to go teleport. Maybe Frostbound nerf. We can move past stuff. A lot of stuff I don't care about that much. Griffin Wing early game. Nutty. Moving on. Divine getting a very important nerf, so it does way less scaling, half the scaling. Very important. Duty sucks less now. That's great. Afro change. Okay, Afro change important to talk about. A lot of these healers, I'm not going to go into the details, but Afro is getting more closer to a rework, so we're going to talk about her really quick. So Kiss does damage now, and it shares 20% of her prots. And so Afro is going to be more of a tank. She is going to play closer to a tank playstyle, which I personally am okay with Afro, but I am not a fan of for gods like Ra and Hell, where they are more damage dealers and less CC focused. Afro is somebody that's kind of skirted this weird line for a long time, where she doesn't quite feel tanky enough to be a support or CC focused enough to be a support. And she gets a lot of benefit out of scaling through power for her heal to be any good. And they're changing that up quite a bit, and she's going to feel more like a tank, and she's much more likely to be a support character and much less likely to be a mid character. And then for a long time, she's basically been bad in solo. So yeah, base damage and scaling on her 1. If you want to build power, this is going to do damage now to make up for some of the changes to her heal if you're trying to make her a scaling damage dealer. So this will help her out. And she's sharing prot. So if you want to be a tank, she's going to feel more effective. If you want to be a damage dealer, she's going to hit harder. She's not necessarily going to feel more effective because she's not going to heal for more based on her power. Decreased heal from 10 to 38 plus 10% to 9 to 21 plus 2 per level. So the way that this works is if we have 400 power, for example, which is a decent amount of mid-game power in a true power build, or a decent amount of power in a hybrid build late game, we're going to be doing 78 healing at that point. Right now, if we're just level 20 and we are doing literally any build after this patch, it is going to be 61. So that's fairly close. That's a 20% nerf with literally any build. You don't have to build power. So Afro is a tank getting much better healing numbers. Afro, with this change to her Kiss bond, she is sharing a lot of prot, and potentially if she's building tanky, giving her teammate a lot of tankiness. 20% is actually a big amount. If you're like fully capped on prots, that's going to be what, like probably, I guess it's total. So I guess it would be like 60 that you're sharing, which is a big chunk. So that's a pretty big deal. And another really big change here is she is getting 0.25 second ability reset for herself and whoever she's linked to per tick for the 3. So the better way to read this is basically just a 1.5 second CD reset. It's just not instant. It's over the whole duration of the 3. 1.5 second cooldown reset is a pretty big deal. And I believe with the way the 3 is applied, it shouldn't be a channel or anything. So it should inherently mean that her 3 cooldown is now 1.5 seconds shorter. Even though they didn't technically add that, this effect should effectively give it that. Yeah, not a crazy difference. It's not like, oh my God, they're linked to Afro, their cooldowns don't exist. But it is going to be a pretty healthy boost where not only are they getting tankier from being linked to Afro, they get cooldown reset. Somebody like Set could be a menace where he's getting 1.5 seconds off his skewer cooldown while he's ulting or something. Could be huge. So it depends a lot based on the god she's linked to, how relevant this is going to be. And also when she's healing them, because their cooldown just might not even be down or something. And then also Jealousy now procs when her ultimate casts for 5 seconds. So if you guys don't know, when you kiss an enemy while you're linked to somebody, they get the Jealousy buff where they now do more damage for a while. And now this will just proc when she ults for herself and her ally. So that's a cool change. I think it's a really good change for Afro. Moving on, Hell. This is the big thing that really bugs me. I don't remember how big her Light Stance passive would be for this. I don't know. But now when she is in Light Stance, enemies do less damage for being near Hell. And her Dark One goes through walls. That's a good change. I'm just moving on to other stuff because it's relevant for how Hell's going to play now. Hell now gets more incentive for building tanky, which I think is really boring. When you're building somebody that does not have a ton of CC or anything, which Hell has very little CC, and you are incentivized to throw damaging abilities off of low cooldowns, heal teammates off of low cooldowns, and just kind of spam, she turns into this really annoying, hard to kill, tanky, but high damage dealing brawler, which I don't think is going to be fun. I think Hell is so much more fun as somebody that can potentially burst, but is very vulnerable. That's got huge potential as a character where you're building her squishy. She can burst, she can heal, but she can get deleted in half a second, and you need to play really smart. And right now, with the way they're balancing right now, when we're changing the scaling to level scaling on her 1 is a heal, as her 3 is a heal, and basically giving her this power reduction as well, she's much more of a tanky brawler that's going to be unfun versus a high skill cap mage that a lot of people are kind of scared to play because she's actually like capable of a ton, but hard to get away with. So I'm not a fan of this. I'm really not. And basically what they're doing is just, again, level scaling on her heals. So more rewarded for building tanky. We're not going to get too deep into the details. Her ult is a 1 second cooldown again, which is a good change because it's kind of dumb having this awkward 2 seconds. Yeah, on to a bunch of heal changes that we don't need to talk about because they're almost all the same. Chang'e now has a new sort of passive kind of added onto her current passive where when she's brawling, she deals 5% increased damage to an enemy stacking 3 times for 4 seconds. So if you're hitting abilities frequently enough, you can scale up your damage over time and continue to hit them harder. That's cool. Other than that, the healing changes kind of similar to a lot of people. We're getting a lot of gods that no longer scale with power at all. They maybe scale with level, or they just don't scale at all. I don't like this change. I think basically just power scaling is interesting on heals. I'm not really a fan of this, but it is what it is, man. And we don't need to go through all of them. Ra, similar to Hell, gets kind of a treatment where he's more of a like buffer and he's not getting as much power scaling. I really think that with all of this anti-heal stuff, maybe I shouldn't say anti-heal, but this healing and nerf stuff where they're trying to kind of balance this. I was going to talk about this later. I'll kind of start touching on it now because we're about to get to it. Self-healing is fine in Smite. Self-healing is completely fine. If Hi-Rez wanted, and this might just be hard, maybe it's even impossible with their current code, I don't know. If they could make it so that abilities, including AoE abilities, if they are applying to the person casting them, should heal for similar amounts to they already did, and there should be no out-of-combat anti-heal. And that way, and anti-heal should be nerfed, so that you can actually heal successfully as an individual, and that can be an interesting component to being a damaging healer, where you can build high damage, and you can have this risk-reward gameplay, where you can ideally heal yourself up through the damage you're taking to at least help yourself out and have a bigger impact on fights. I think that's really interesting. Characters like Camazotz, Thanatos, Set, that can be a really interesting component. And those heals are never so strong early game that they're OP. Because by the time that those heals are scaling up, which is that whole thing that they're getting rid of, by the time they're scaling up, which they used to do and they're now no longer going to do, you can build anti-heal. You can go Divine, you can go Brawlers, you can go Toxic Blade, you can go Pestilence, you can go Contagion, you can go Ankh. You can go all these different ways to counter that healing and deal with that healing. And instead they're drifting towards, let's just not incentivize scaling on any level in any form. Instead of it just being, let self-healers do their fun, interesting self-heal thing where they can play these tricky little games and try and get huge rewards for themselves. If they do that with stuff like Ra heal, where Ra can heal himself for the same amount as before, but he can't heal teammates anywhere near as much, then Ra is no longer terrifying like we saw in that recent video I got, where I was healing myself a ton and I was healing my teammates a ton and I got 25k healing in like 25 minutes, something like that. That's absolutely absurd. And they did do a bad job of anti-healing us, so we kind of got away with it. But even if they did anti-heal us like that, heal was going to be really strong as long as we're staying alive. We get crazy Ra value in that game because we got huge AoE heals. And if they can just make it so that you heal yourself significantly more and teammates significantly less on those AoE type abilities like that, then I think healing will already be balanced. I think just like that. If you heal on Hell 3 for 50% to allies, Ra 3 for 50% to allies, Afro 3 is actually fine. Afro is a single target heal. Just leave that thing the same. I don't think it's OP, man. I think it's fine. And then that way, when you're getting those single target heals, you are actually focusing anti-heal on those single targets, and it's not as big of a deal. But yeah, like Smite does have this problem with AoE healing where sometimes you can just dip out of combat, heal up really fast. And if they just hard nerf those AoEs so that you're not giving your teammates so much health and they have to deal with that shit on their own a lot more, then I think they just fix everything. And I think it makes the game a lot better. But instead we're going this weird scaling route and I'm not a fan of it. That's basically my pitch. We're going to go more into it in a second here. Guan potentially broken with this, by the way. I kind of forgot this was a thing. 1 second flat cooldown reduction for allied gods healed. I'm only saying potentially broken because if this applies to him as well, then it's going to be really stupid because he already gets 2 seconds. It'll be 3, and that'd be insane. So I'm assuming they did not let that go by. I'm assuming this is only allies. Normally with this wording, this would also apply to him. So worth keeping that in mind. Guan might be super OP. We'll have to see. Yeah, lots of heal nerfs over and over again. Occasionally some small buffs in certain spots, but it's, you know, if you guys want to read this, just go read it on your own. I don't want to talk about every single thing. It's just ridiculous. AMC Hive is now HP 5 instead of technically healing, so any sort of weird healing cheese is no longer a thing. It's just HP 5. It was basically HP 5 before, it just wasn't coded that way. Yeah, Anubis, we already talked about this. Gets to move a little bit in his 1, and now his 1 also procs twice as often for about half the damage. So just a little bit cleaner, less clunky, more reliable damage source. Big nerf to his passive naturally, because that's also healing. All these different things are just lots of different nerfs to healing. Arachne, believe it or not, nerf to her healing, even though it already sucked. Arachne's a garbage god. Hi-Rez doesn't care. They're like, her 1 sucked, let's make it suck more. She does get this kind of cool thing on her too, though, that I hope they add more of in the future, where targets successfully stunned by her 2 have an active cooldown increase of 2 seconds. So anything on cooldown, let's say you kit dump on an Arachne and then she stuns you, all of your cooldowns should hypothetically go up by 2 the moment you're stunned. Like, so they'll take 2 seconds longer to come back, which is a cool concept. She still sucks. Like, this doesn't really matter. It's a cool concept. It doesn't really matter for Arachne. She's a garbage god. That's just the sad truth. So adding some healing reduction to some kind of random stuff. Okay. Yeah, I think, by the way, I think I skipped something. My bad. I will go all the way back for anybody watching. I'll go all the way back. One thing I accidentally skipped over, is another cooldown reduction thing they added is very randomly to Death's Embrace. I skipped this on accident, by the way. Very big change here, where naturally this is getting healing nerfs, like everything. You now get 0.33 seconds reduced off of your non-ultimate cooldowns when you land an auto on an enemy. Also, seemingly, this does not need to be to gods, by the way, because Death's Embrace does not just proc on gods, it procs on enemies in general. So that's also important to keep in mind, is normally these items are procking on gods. This one doesn't just proc on gods, unless they just forgot to add that in. So yeah, hang on. Okay, I don't think this matters. The deal damage and restore less health for each enemy hit after the first and only count. Okay. Yeah, I was making sure I wasn't missing something here. I'm not. Yeah, basically there's no AoE cheese for the cooldown. But if you are playing Bellona or you're playing Osiris and you're going that auto attack speed tank build, so like Shoguns, Berserkers, you should be getting around 1.7 attack speed. With Osiris, with his crazy hit chain, he's getting around 2 attack speed, sort of, in terms of how often his autos are landing, which means if you hit somebody for 3 seconds, you are getting, at least for Osiris, a flat 2-second cooldown reduction if you're just autoing them for 3 seconds straight with just that build, no extra attack speed added in. Bellona gets a little bit less. Very feasible to auto somebody for 3 seconds with those characters in the late game with Death's Embrace. So this is going to be potentially a very high impact. It's capable of adding this effect to it. It'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out. But this means more disarms, more Bellona dashes, more Osiris ones, stuff like that. It's got potentially pretty strong impact. Something I forgot about. Moving back on down. See, where were we at? I think we're getting to around here. Yeah, we're getting to around here. Okay. Yeah, again, these buffs and nerfs, I'm really not going to talk about that much. They're not really that big. Nothing too crazy. Gods are mostly going to feel about the same, just generally nerfed to healing. Yeah. This one, very oddly vague, by the way. Vampire Bats now provides anti-heal. We don't know how much. I don't know if this is a weird way of them saying 100%, because that would be kind of cool, but I really doubt that's what they're doing. I'm assuming they just forgot to put the number in. So yeah, I don't know what this is. But I do want to talk with Camazotz and with Set, who we're going to see in a second here. These are the self-healer gods that are getting dumpstered by these healing changes, so I want to talk about that. Kind of contradicting... I guess not really contradicting. Basically, with the raw and held changes that I'm not a fan of, where it feels like, and the raw one doesn't matter as much, but you're getting less rewarded for building power on what should otherwise be squishy, vulnerable mages. And they have this kind of fun, unique playstyle where you can potentially damage a lot, potentially heal a lot, but there's this massive downside of being low mobility, right? So Hi-Rez doesn't want you to have huge AoE heals, and they're even taking away their single target heals. I think it'd be great if those gods can at least have those single target heals because they're so vulnerable and they can still keep them like more damage power focused build wise, right? That's what I love to see for the mages. For these assassins like Camazotz and Set who build power, it's very, very awkward that they're doing these similar nerfs when they are actually just single target healing. Set does not heal any teammates. Camazotz does not heal any teammates in any circumstance. I mean, you can go med, but like, stop. So decrease heal from 20 plus 100% power to 20 to 100 flat. Camazotz, you're building basically full damage in almost any game ever. At least you should be. So as you get late game, you're typically going to have at least 300 power with a late game build. That means you are going from 320 healing to 100. Early game, this change doesn't matter that much. Early game, you're not going to have power. Early game, you can actually be a little bit of a buff if you're leveling your 2 first. But for most of the game, this is a massive nerf to his healing. And if you guys play Camazotz, you should know his 2 already is bad as a heal. It is not good. It is not very strong. It can be okay. Sometimes, you know what? Sometimes it feels a little bit nice, but it doesn't immediately give you that heal reward like Thanatos one does. It takes a long time to come back. And even if you get it back, it's like max 320. And that's not insane. There's tons of other self heals that can be way bigger. Like Tear Cleave can do that, man. Tear's a warrior and it does it early game. Like it's crazy to nerf him this hard and it's so unnecessary. And they do a similar thing to his 3, right? Look at this, 832 plus 25%, 10 to 50. So again, if we're getting that 300 power, this is 75 right here. And they're just giving it 18 more to compensate. And this is an AoE, so we can do that 75 multiple times. So this would be 32 plus 75, which is 107. And this is 50. So this is an over half nerf to his self-healing, not his AoE healing. And that's such a giant nerf to Camazotz in general. And what we get back is 10 base damage, 5% scaling, a little bit of cooldown, depending on how leveled it is. That's it. I really don't like these changes for self-healers, man. I think it's such a bad way to go. It makes no sense to not let an assassin that is specifically built around having damage and healing as a trade-off, and then having a lack of CC for that. Set, no CC, except for a slow. Camazotz, no CC, except for a slow. Thanatos does have a little bit of CC, but Thanatos kind of does his own thing. And I'm pretty sure they didn't really hit Thanatos that hard. But these specific characters, they are specifically built to be damage and healing. And you can build anti-heal, and you can specifically hit that god with an anti-heal item, and they will be punished very hard. And now they're just punished for existing and having the kit that they were given, and they're not getting removed from the game. They're just getting sort of low-key removed from the game until Hi-Rez maybe wants to rebalance them into a way that's less fun because they're not going to have healing anymore. Like that's what I'm getting from this. So yeah, these gods aren't really a problem, and they're just getting hit in the crossfire anyways. I'm not a fan of it. I'm really not. More nerfs. Nerfing Kronos. I didn't even read this one the first time around. It's just, this heal sucks, so it's just funny to me. It's such a bad heal. It's such a bad stance. Nerfs. Like bunch of heal nerfs. A little bit of other changes. This one's actually a little bit big. I'll talk about this really quick. Herc not only getting a heal nerf, but also a damage returned heal nerf. It shouldn't come as a surprise. It's worth mentioning. Herc heal's insane, and it's kind of different. Lots of scrolling to do for this. My God. Can I get to the stuff I care about? I don't know if I can, man. By the way, huge buff to Acorn. I don't think I caught that first time around for some reason. Absolutely massive. I think Rat's just about to be insane. The hell? Are they why? What? Rat Acorn is about to be dummy thick, and I don't know why. That's really random. Yeah, you can no longer heal on Tank Rat, so you now one shot on Damage Rat. Like, like what? These are different builds. Why are we buffing Damage Rat to nerf Heal Rat? So Set's the other change right here. 35 to 75 heal plus 25% power that you can proc over and over and over again from his ultimate is now 25 to 85 flat. So again, we can do a Set build. Let's say we have 300 power on a Set late game build. That means we're getting 75 plus 75, which is 150, and this is going to be about half of that. And he's a self healer, man. And anti-heal items are basically the same, right? Like we looked at those. They're not getting nerfed. They still do 40%. They don't even talk about it. Like they're just staying the same. So, and these are in combat heals normally too. Like Set ult literally has to proc off gods, so that's in combat. Camazotz 2 can heal him, and his 3 can heal him out of combat. But a lot of time the scary impact is him in combat. I also forgot to talk about Soul Eaters. We got to go back and do that. But yeah, like these self-healers don't need to get dumpstered. Just straight up. And I'm getting, especially these strong self-healers, they're going for around 50% nerfs around stages of the game where it's significant. That's exactly what I'm talking about with these AoEs. If they just nerf the AoE impact by 50%, I think everything's fixed, and we don't have to do these awkward things where we're kind of like taking away interesting characters and interesting kits from the game and making them significantly less interesting and changing how they're balanced. Yeah, what did they do to Thana? There's nothing crazy, right? Yeah, Athena didn't get hit that hard. Like it's a nerf, but it's not anywhere near as impactful as the Camazotz or the like it still scales. It's not as strong as the Camazotz or the set nerfs. Hi-Rez Y. We decreased Ruler cooldown so that he can spam cooldown more with his dumb passive that we've never changed. Oh my god. Okay, let me go back to Soul Eater and then I think patch note's over. Soul Eater, where you at? Is it down? I think it's down. Yeah, I think I passed it. Soul Eater gets a massive nerf. There's been a couple things I've skimmed that are actually pretty relevant and I've forgotten to talk about. I don't really want to talk about the lifesteal items. It's too many. There's so much to talk about. This video's already gone way longer than I thought it would. I thought I could do it in 30 minutes. It's still going to take an hour. The original was going to take 2 hours. So Soul Eater getting halved. 20% ability lifesteal, 10% ability lifesteal. Very big nerf. It does get a little power. It doesn't really matter. You build Soul Eater for the ability lifesteal straight up. The other lifesteal is not very important. The power was already not particularly good. And so that is a giant nerf to Soul Eater. And it should mostly, I think, remove it in terms of viability in the game. I could be wrong because, again, there's no out-of-combat anti-heal now. So that's going to help. But Soul Eater is an item that you tended to brawl with. You at least tended to be able to brawl with and get that full impact out of. And now that's not something where it's like, oh, get in combat and get that full heal. You're just straight up going to get that half heal every time. So that should feel way worse. Soul Eater normally felt bad if you were only using it in out-of-combat anti-heal circumstances. And this is kind of like just giving it that always, but still a little bit nerfed on the top. And you can still anti-heal it with all those items that are still completely as strong as they were before. So, yeah, I think this patch is mixed, man. I think this patch is very mixed, where I think Hi-Rez, it looks like they absolutely killed it with UI and HUD. I did not expect to see that at all. It looks like they just crushed it. It looks amazing. They added tons of details. It seems incredibly fluid. Whoever did it's probably a genius and deserves a raise. It looks phenomenal. It makes it look like a way higher end game than we would normally see. Like it looks like just straight up like AAA game. So that's great. There's some jungle changes, art changes. I haven't gotten to look at those yet. I'm assuming they're fine. I'm assuming they're not crazy. Probably don't care all that much. They're just a little bit of a change, spice things up a little bit. That's great. Some of the jungle changes that I did get to see, like the camps and stuff, that's fine. Sure. Nothing too crazy. But I think the big focal points of this patch is healing and the UI. And the UI stuff is great. The healing stuff, I think they can do so much better. I'm really glad they got rid of the whole out-of-combat anti-heal system. That was originally a Band-Aid fix. It stayed in the game way too long, I think. But exactly the stuff that I've talked about in this video, I think are way better solutions to the healing problem than what they're doing right now. And I think the Afro rework's great. Like, I think Afro she's the god that was just generally bad. I think a lot, like everything they added to her, I think was basically good. I'm just not a fan of the way they're scaling or healing and those other gods either. So yeah, I don't know. My general thoughts, UI great. Healing could be a lot better. I would love it if they make it so that gods that have AoE heals like Guan Yu, Horus, Hel, Ra, Chang'e, if those AoE heals heal for like 50% of the amount that it heals the individual god, then that god can still feel strong as a self-healer, and the healing still gets hard nerfed, and then anti-heal still exists. And you can still buy that if you need it. And then that way they can leave self-healers alone, and self-healers can do their own thing. And I think, honestly, like, I'm pretty sure that's all they need to do, but it's not what they did. So I'm kind of disappointed with that. I don't know, I just feel Camazotz and Set are going to feel bad to play. Yeah. And some of the other characters too. Like it's just going to feel weird. Like I don't want to play Tank Hell. I'm down to play Damage Hell. I don't want to play Tank Hell. And I think it's just going to feel bad to build her damage now because you get so much less incentive for her healing at least. Similar thing for Ra. Ra heal's going to feel way worse in terms of scaling. He's going to be much more damage focused, but Ra doesn't have reliable damage, so he's probably just going to be bad. Yeah, kind of funky, man. Kind of funky. Those are my thoughts on patch notes. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one.